Hello everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for giving up your evening. We're going to look at remote consultations. I'm here to say, are you ready? We hope that you're going to enjoy the session. It will last about 50 minutes, so we'll finish about 7:20 because I'm sure you've got lots of stuff you need to get on with. And we really appreciate your time and energy here today. So firstly, can I introduce myself and my colleague Mark, who's joining me today. So I'm sure you've all heard of Hello, My Name Is. Hello, My Name Is was a campaign started by Dr. Kate Granger when she was a patient with a very rare sarcoma. And she talked about the fact that it was really difficult when she was a patient because nobody introduced themselves to her. She died a couple of years ago now, but she lives a fantastic legacy with Hello, My Name Is. And it's something that I feel it's really important to promote at every event that I do. So hello, my name's Kim. I'm a nurse by profession, but I'm the professional liaison consultant at the HCPC, and my job really is to go out and support registrants in the really difficult jobs you do. I'm going to hand over to Mark, who's going to introduce himself. Mark.
Good evening, great to see so many of you here this evening. My name is Mark Bezic, a children's occupational therapist by trade. Previously worked in NHS Shetland, which for those of you who don't know is a little island halfway between Scotland and Norway, laterally using video appointments clinically, and then later on looking at supporting AHPs and staff and patients in using video appointments in Scotland, and then recently just been seconded into the Scottish Government as the national lead for the Near Me network. We'll speak more about that a bit later on, but that job is very much around spreading and embedding video appointment practice across Scotland. Thanks, Kim.
Brilliant, Mark. Thank you very much. So this is a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So we're going to have a look at the HCPC role and standards. We're going to talk about the opportunities and challenges of working remotely. We're very well aware that lots of you have been working remotely for some time now, probably about 9 or 10 months. But what we thought this webinar would do is just give you time to take stock, and also hear from somebody who's very experienced like Mark, who's done lots and lots on remote consultations, and look at our HCPC guidance and how it can be used in the jobs that you do. So as I said, last about 50 minutes. There'll be lots of opportunity for chat. So in the chat box down on the side of the screen that you'll see, lots and lots of opportunity for you to ask questions. I'm joined by my colleagues Kelly and Holly, and I wonder, Kelly and Holly, if you just introduce yourself, if you don't mind. You'd have had lots of emails from Holly. So Holly, come to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. My name's Holly. I am the Events and Communications Officer at the HCPC. So I help with the events within the organisation and send you lots of emails and deal with communications as well.
And I should say, Holly, you'll be sending out a survey following the session, won't you? Yeah. Which will include, we should say, the links to the recording of the session. All the links that we put on the chat bar will be in a lovely email for you. There'll be answers to questions that you maybe have asked Mark that we haven't had time to answer, and everything will be there for you, including a survey. Once you've done the survey, that would be great, and we'll send you out a certificate after that. So thanks, Holly, for that. And Kelly.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Kelly Green, and I am the Professionalism and Upstream Regulation Lead at the Health and Care Professions Council. That really means leading very much on a bit of a shift in the way that we regulate. I don't know if you've seen our new corporate strategy, but there's an awful lot in there about us doing more with insights, learning from our engagements, but also from our fitness to practice work, and then bringing that learning out to you. So alongside with Kim, you'll see me hopefully quite a lot more in the future. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kelly. And what we wanted to start from all of us is to say a big thank you to all of you for what you're doing. There was a statement a couple of days ago from our chief executive that gave a big thank you out to everybody, continuing to provide care for patients through these really difficult and terribly challenging times. And we're very well aware that the current surge in cases means that you're all likely to face increased burden in what you do, both in caring for patients, and some of you will be involved in giving COVID vaccinations, which is fantastic. So you're doing an awful lot, and we'd like to thank you. But we'd also, in our statement, and we will put the link to the statement on the website, because we wanted to reassure you that we do recognise that you may feel anxious about how, if you get a complaint against you, how the context is taken into account where concerns are raised about decisions and actions that you take in these very challenging circumstances. And we wanted to reassure you that where a concern is raised, it will be considered on the specific facts of the case, and we'll always take into account the factors related to the environment in which you're working. And we'll also take into account any relevant information about resources, guidelines or protocols. So I just wanted to reassure you about that, because I think it's a really important statement that only came out literally a couple of days ago. So that's a bit about what we're going to cover today and how the session's going to work. I'm going to do a little bit, then Mark's going to do a little bit, and then we're going to do a joint bit at the end. So let's look at a little bit about the HCPC role and standards. There's some great stuff on our website about what we do, but one of the really important things we do is we produce standards and guidance. We've got the green book there, as I call it, the standards for education and training. We go out and quality assure universities, as you know. We produce the standards of proficiency that you each have in the blue book for your own profession. We do CPD and registration, and in our red book is the standards of conduct, proficiency and ethics, which we do webinars about, but I'll talk about that later. So that's the 10 standards of proficiency that you have to abide by. So we're going to start with a tiny bit of polling, and if you could humour me a little bit, because we need some information from you before we start. If you've had a chance to download the Slido app before the session, that's great. If you haven't, sorry, I shouldn't say it isn't an app. If you just go onto Google and put in Slido, exactly as it's spelt on the screen there, you come up with a website. You don't need to put your name, email in, and I think that's one of the beauties of this this website, is that you don't need to put anything in, which means you won't get any contact with them afterwards. And you put a code in, and the code we're going to use for today, you'll be asked for an event code, is RC2, remote consultations 2, because this is the second of a webinar on remote consultations. And I'm going to ask you just a couple of questions, if you don't mind humouring me. This is really important for us to know which professional group you belong to. And the reason it's important is because as the HCPC, we obviously regulate 15 professional groups, but we need to be sure that we are connecting with you. And if we're not connecting with you, we need to understand why we're not connecting with you, because we need to then think in our communication strategy what we need to do to make that engagement, because we're here to support you, and it's really important that we do that. So I can see that, we've got lots of occupational therapists. I think Mark is quite a draw because he's an occupational therapist, I know. We've got some physiotherapists, dietitians, paramedics, radiographers. Oh, fantastic. We've got quite a big mix. Thank you so much for doing this. We don't get everybody responding, but we will get a fair number, which is really helpful of you. Again, just for our own data, it gives us lots of information. Thank you very much for that. One more question, and this is quite a telling one, really, and I actually really enjoy asking this. When you think of the HCPC, what word comes to mind? Now, I think it's interesting because I think when I think of the NMC, my regulatory body, I think it's interesting to think what words come to mind, and I'm always interested looking at those words, and the bigger the word, the more people said it. So lots of you are saying that the HCPC means for you standards, regulation, registration, which I can totally understand. I can see that you think it's a regulatory body, it's professional, that we do get involved in CPD, which we certainly do. But somebody's mentioning some more negative things, which means, and that's absolutely fine, it's really useful for us to know those things. I just should say distance, pain, it's making me smile, £180. I'm smiling because it makes me realise that's sort of when I would think about the NMC, some of those words would maybe be very similar. So it's really helpful because it enables us again to think about the way we engage with you and how we can break down some of these issues and help in that regard. So really appreciate that. It's really, really helpful. And my last question, which is really helpful for Mark, because it gives him a real idea of how confident do you feel about doing remote consultations? And we think that in the room, because we did this session yesterday, as I said, we think that in the room yesterday there was quite a wide range, and I'm looking at the screen now, there's quite a wide range from people who feel super confident and people who don't feel as confident and perhaps haven't had any involvement, and that's absolutely fine. And Mark will talk a lot about the journey, particularly with the near me functionality and how that journey has sort of taken off since lockdown happened, but also the challenges he had before lockdown of implementing remote consultation. So thank you very much for that. It's really appreciated. That's all the polling for the time being. We'll return to it at the end if that's okay. Bit of GDPR. We're all used to this because of the data protection that we all have to deal with now. Just to recognise that on the chat bar, your name will come up. So against the question that you ask, your name will come up, but that's absolutely fine. it's just really useful for you to know that. And any comments or polling data we will use in our evaluation data, because obviously we've got to make sure that we are doing the right thing for you, that we're doing these webinars and they're useful for you. We're spending your money wisely. I think that's really important. So the first question you're going to need to ask yourself is, should we be doing a remote consultation? And I found this really excellent flow chart from the Chartered Society of Physiotherapists. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's really, really good. I think it summarises all the things to think about when you are doing a remote consultation and when you're making that decision. And Mark will cover some of those issues in a minute. I think we do need to be aware of the heightened levels of anxiety, particularly, you know, during the second wave. It's becoming a lot more, we're becoming a lot more anxious and stressed. There's a lot of stress amongst healthcare workers, understandably, and particularly, you know, a lot of us becoming more touched by COVID, as I would say. So, you know, when you're on a call with patients, they may be suffering COVID symptoms, their family and relatives, they might have somebody in hospital, or somebody is suffering, somebody is upstairs self-isolating. And also we need to be thinking about our own well-being. We will return to this later on, but you know, we as healthcare professionals don't often, unless you were used to working remotely before, we don't often invite patients into our own home, and that's really essentially service users what we're doing at the moment. And that means that the barriers and the boundaries that we normally have between home and work life are completely broken down. And it's incredibly stressful. Mark's going to talk about later about how stressful it is working remotely and using video platforms, and how incredibly stressful that is and how that impacts on your well-being. So we'll signpost you some art to some of our well-being resources, and this is the one that I would really recommend to you. It's continually being updated, and it's sort of like a repository. It's like a library of lots and lots of well-being resources, and I know that lots of you will also have had well-being resources sort of put in place by your employers, so please do access them. I have to say that I worked during the first wave clinically, and I personally accessed the psychologist at the local hospital where I work, who was incredibly helpful to me during the couple of sessions that I needed at that time. So I'm going to hand over to Mark, because he's going to talk about video consultation with the Near Me platform and the Attend Anywhere, aren't you, Mark?
Thank you, Kim. Yes, thanks for the introduction. So basically, just to kick off, Near Me is the video appointment platform that's been chosen by the Scottish Government, NHS Scotland, and I'm acutely aware that we're speaking to people from across the UK and beyond, perhaps. So you may well be exposed to or have the option to use different video consultation platforms or different tools, and the principles we're speaking about from myself and from Kim still apply. So whichever platform you're using, then this is all still relevant. But I'm specifically going to speak about Near Me, because that's what the chosen platform is in Scotland. Just to clarify as well, Near Me was the name chosen by service users in the early pilot study in NHS Highland. Attend Anywhere is the software and the platform that runs and empowers Near Me. So you may well know of Attend Anywhere across the other bits of the UK and other parts of Britain, but in Scotland it's called Near Me. So basically it's very quick, it's very simple for clinicians and patients to use, doesn't require any downloads, doesn't require to log in, or and you can have up to 5 people join a Near Me call. So you can do some elements of groups. It does allow you to bring in other family members. So if I was having a consultation with my healthcare provider and I needed, I don't know, my wife or a parent or an interpreter, then they could come into the call as well, and the person running the call can send out a unique link just for that call on that day, and a person can join in to support that consultation. You can also share screens within Near Me. So we have examples of an orthotist, for example, showing somebody how to don their foot equipment, their orthoses, using the manufacturer's YouTube clips that they've shared on screen. So the person with the orthosis gets the actual manufacturer's directions and can be talked through that with the orthotist. There's also a text function within Near Me. So if I have speech and language therapy colleagues who used to use the text function for people who were using BSL perhaps, or for people who found it easier to text how they were feeling and how they were going that day rather than speaking it. So the text function is really helpful there. In a few minutes, we're going to watch a little video, hopefully, of what Near Me looks like for patients. But what I'd like to do really is just to engage with us as a Near Me network within Scotland. There's a couple of Twitter addresses on there, so at NHS Near Me, and then myself as well. So some of the other things that came up in the previous webinar was around support for people using Near Me. So again, please get in touch with us on Twitter if that's a way that will enable you to link in with ourselves and other professionals using Near Me. Also within the resources, there's the Near Me Teams web address, email address, and we'll give that out at the end as well. There is also CPD resources on TOURAS, and there's some handouts within the slides that we're going to get out to you later on. And TOURAS is the CPD platform used by NHS Scotland. It's a Gaelic word for journey. And you can find lots of stuff on TOURAS there, but we've got links for that to share with you. And I would also encourage people to share their experiences of Near Me in the Q&A. That has been really valuable for people to see how other professions are using Near Me. And also if somebody poses a question in the Q&A and you think there's a solution that you found where you work, then please share that. That's been that really helpful peer-to-peer sharing has been something that we've used in Scotland to help embed and spread Near Me as a tool. So anyway, we're going to watch a quick video and we'll speak a bit more about what Near Me's done in Scotland, and then we'll have a chance to have a break and some hopefully dialogues and questions with you. So let's try this video, Kim.
There are times when making it to hospital for an appointment can be stressful and time-consuming. Whether you're travelling a long way or just trying to make it across town, getting there can often seem like a test in itself. If you sometimes feel it'd be easier just to stay put, you'll be glad to know that's exactly what we are making available. The internet has given us new ways to connect with each other. It has also given us new ways to access our health and care services. Near Me is a secure online service that enables you to attend video appointments with your clinician from the comfort and convenience of your own home, or workplace, or local centre. All you need is an internet-enabled device with a webcam, a Chrome or Safari web browser, and a quiet and private area to make your call. Your Near Me appointment is part of your clinician's day-to-day routine and will be conducted in much the same way. When you start the call, you go into a private online waiting area and can see where you are in the queue. It's just like waiting at the hospital, but a bit more relaxing. The clinician will join you for a private consultation when they are ready to see you. Any care and follow-up you need will be arranged as normal. With Near Me, you get the same high standard of care, but without the disruption to your daily routine, saving you time, stress, and money.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Yeah, that seemed to work right this time. So that's kind of Near Me in a nutshell, basically, and that's the video that was produced in Scotland for patients. So just going to share with you now our kind of Near Me journey last year. So before March last year, we were looking at 300 consultations a week for Near Me, and then COVID came along, and you can see by the graph it increased somewhat rapidly. We hit just under 20,000 consultations a week across Scotland just before Christmas. So it's been a huge uptake, and that continues. I think we broke our daily record yesterday. I think we had 4,500 consults yesterday in Scotland using Near Me. So it's been quite a thing. So as part of the Near Me network, we're really keen to sustain Near Me as a choice for people across health and social care. So we have now expanded Near Me to be available across social care and the public sector. So currently we are involved in projects where we are interacting with care homes across Scotland, enabling them to use Near Me to support their residents. We've just started projects with the Citizen Advice Bureaus across Scotland so that people can access good advice in times like this when they really need it. We've done projects with minor injuries units, emergency departments, primary care, and also out of hours. So there's lots of really good projects we've done across Scotland to support the embedding and spreading of Near Me across the population rather than just people accessing NHS now. Last August, we reached 500,000 Near Me calls from the very beginning of when it was first introduced in Scotland in 2016. Now, our surveys post Near Me calls ask how many miles people saved travelling. And they report that on average it's 28 miles is the average journey that people save for a hospital consultation. So we worked out that 500,000 Near Me calls, 28 miles average, that's 14 million health miles saved. That's 14 million miles less travelled potentially on roads in Scotland, and that's just the patients before we even figure in to the savings that staff make by not having to travel out to see people. So environmentally, big impact as well in terms of video appointments. So the next slide is around some of the resources, around nearme.scot is the public information site that I shared with you before. There is information on there for professionals and the CPD tools you'll find around on the TORAS website. So again, these will all be available to you later on. The next slide is very much around, we did a lot of work with a public consultation exercise last summer to find out what public felt about video calls, and this was professionals and members of the public, and there was an overwhelming percentage that felt that video consulting should be used. However, I want to draw attention to the 10% where that wasn't the case. And I think we need to be very mindful as clinicians working with people that a video call is a choice that is offered. We want to make sure that we're not assuming that a video call is for them that day. I might want to speak to somebody by phone one day to talk about my health needs, and other days a video might be really helpful, but other days I might not want to have that video contact. Or there's some days where actually it really needs to be a face-to-face contact. So we're really trying to stress that using a Near Me call is part of a choice, a range, or a suite of options available to you as a clinician to meet the people's needs that are accessing your services. So that's just a little snapshot. There's a link in the resources to the whole public consultation across Scotland. If you'd like to read more about that, then please do visit that. The next slide basically summarises what the public and what professionals thought about video and Near Me. And as you can see by the table here, there's a lot of commonality. Benefits were appreciated by both public and professionals, but very similar. For example, lower infection risk and things like travel and convenience. So lots of joint benefits for using video appointments. And again, the next slide is just the link to the public consultation. The other thing we undertook in last summer was the equality impact assessment. So again, we spent a lot of time with groups that were often in minority or potentially marginalised from accessing technology or being able to access remote digital resources. And again, we've got there's a link to the full equality impact assessment, which we're continuing to review. Actually, there's work being done by my colleague touching base with all health boards across Scotland to look at what they've done locally in response to the impact assessment. And this is again very much a summing up of what people told us about Near Me in Scotland last year, and it really challenged our assumptions. We had lots of assumptions around the age of people that may or may not be able to use Near Me. Many elderly folk are very, very able on digital things now. And also we had certain clinical groups, for example, people with autism felt the videos actually were really good for them because they didn't have to go to a really busy, noisy waiting area. But also sometimes videos was quite hard for people with autism. So what that told us was that it's a very unique personal thing, and we shouldn't make assumptions about what that person needs on that day unless we ask them. So that's a wee kind of tour around Near Me in Scotland, and the journey we've been through the last 12 months and a little bit previous. And now's an opportunity maybe to put some questions out, and I'm happy to field those if Kim and Kelly want to throw them open. That would be super.
We'll go to Kelly if that's right, because she's been keeping an eye on the chat box. Kelly, what's coming up?
I have. Yes, thank you. And thank you everyone for your questions. So we're going to try and answer them as we go. Again, we're getting quite a few. One we've had from Kim was asking, was your consultation communication inclusive to reach people who can't read, for example? I don't know if that's something you're able to answer, Mark.
Yeah, we do have. We're just working on a range of multilingual leaflets. They're just currently being sense checked at the minute, and I think some of the YouTube videos, like what I showed you earlier, had somebody signing on them. So there are options to give people materials prior to their appointment. There's an information leaflet embedded with every waiting area in Near Me that's unique to that waiting area, and that can be put into any format that you need, and we're currently doing that with the different languages. But with the way Near Me works, is that if a sign language or an interpreter needs to be involved, it allows you to do that safely and securely. So that does exist within Near Me as a tool. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. A couple of others, which I won't read them separately, but they're really just asking about platforms, different platforms that might be used in independent practice. So we have one, again, Kirsty has posted a question really probably for the other delegates that have joined us tonight. So feel free to answer this for Kirsty, but what are people in independent practice using as a platform for video consultation? So if you're in independent practice and you're using different platforms, perhaps you could start answering that for us in the Q&A box, and then we can post that so that you can all start to share some of that with you. And then someone was asking whether Near Me is only used by the NHS.
Initially it was called NHS Near Me in Scotland, but now the Scottish Government have enabled it to be available to public services and social services across Scotland. So yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
And I was going to ask you, Mark, if you don't mind a question, but I just wondered, when you're using Near Me, how you go about doing assessments of patients. And I know that you've been involved with doing newborn assessments over video, over using Near Me. How did that work?
Yeah. So I suppose in my kind of previous role, then we used to follow up joint with the physiotherapist babies born prematurely. So we did lots of developmental checks to reassure parents that everything was going to be okay, or pick up anything that needed action as soon as possible. So we were wondering how we were going to do this, because it's a very kind of tactile, visual kind of activity. So we did a bit of searching around, tried a few things out, and we managed to get a way where we could wedge someone's device, whether that's an iPad or a mobile phone, in a position in the room where the parent was with their baby at home. And we had to think quite carefully about lighting and also which camera was used, because the front-facing cameras on things like devices and iPads and mobile phones is pretty poor, but the one at the back's really good, so you can get quite good digital images from the rear-facing camera. So after a little bit of planning and preparation with families, so we gave them information about what we would expect to see. We're going to see your baby on its tummy, on its back. We're going to see if it can roll over. So the family knew what was expected on the day, and they could get the room ready. They could get the lighting ready. We could have a practice call perhaps with a camera, and then that enabled the physiotherapist and I to beam in remotely from 2 different places and watch a parent with their baby put the baby through the kind of things we perhaps would do as therapists, and observe how that baby was managing. And again, that gave us really good developmental information about how the baby was doing. And if there were concerns, and if there were things that we weren't sure about, we absolutely find a way of getting them in to see them. But the majority of the babies we saw, everything's usually fine. So for that level of clinical decision making, it was appropriate, but it allowed us to, if we weren't sure or we saw things that were a risk factor, then we could say, actually, let's get you in and have a chat about that. So thank you, Kim, for.
Gosh, no, fascinating. Thank you, Mark. That's really interesting. Gosh. OK, and I can really see how you could, but it takes a lot of planning, doesn't it? A lot of time and effort. But then you would normally plan to have your patient come into your clinic, wouldn't you? It's time that you would normally think about your setting and think about what equipment you forgot. So it's just part of your routine job, isn't it, really? And
you also find very young children often they often behave quite differently at home with their parents than they do in a clinic room.
Right. So actually you're getting more reality than
I would think so, yeah. And it does take a bit of time initially. I think the more we've done this and the more families have done it, it's just like, okay, yeah, this is what's happening this week, and it's all fine.
That's great. OK, thank you very much, Mark. Brilliant. So we'll come back to questions a bit later, but we've covered some of these issues already, which is fantastic. We've talked a little bit about the preparation. Mark and I were beginning to talk about preparation. I think one thing we wanted to reinforce to you was that checking who's with the service user and making sure that you document that, thinking about confidentiality. We've talked about some special needs. Mark's talked about translators, which I was really interested to see how that actually worked, and thinking about sign language and thinking about the use of the captions along the bottom as well. So there are some real, good things embedded within a lot of, it's not just near me, but within a lot of platforms that you can use all these things. Thinking about use of headsets, thinking about privacy, thinking about privacy for the patients, that's really important. So it goes without saying, really. So we picked up from quite a lot of queries that come into our policy team that one of the things that you as registrants are a little bit worried about is people recording your consultation. And I know Mark was telling me that he doesn't know, because obviously we're talking about overt recording, but you can also, patients can and service users can covertly record you as well. And I thought I would signpost you to this really good NHS Protect document, which is called Patients Recording NHS Staff in Health and Social Care Settings. It's a couple of years old now, but it's really good, and it talks about the importance of hopefully the patient asking or the service user asking for your permission to enable for them to do that. And there are lots of reasons why people might want to record your consultation, from being able to play it back, to share with their family member, particularly in these times their family member might be a long distance from them, so they can just play it to them. But also thinking about that if you're showing them some sort of strategy for pain relief or use of, if they've broken a limb or something like that, then they can actually play it back and continue to play it back to learn. And the most important thing is they should ask your permission, obviously. And if you're not comfortable, you can say that, but actually the most important thing is that you can't refuse for them to record. But what you can say is that recording shouldn't be uploaded onto a social media or any other platform, because that's when it becomes a real issue. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Yes, it's been quite a contentious issue in Scotland as well, and it's divided staff. Some staff have been like, I would really welcome somebody recording if they think what I'm going to share with them is very important enough to record and save for later, so they can look back on it. And we know that not everybody takes on board what happens in a consultation, remembers what goes on. And I suppose I would ask, what is it about the relationship with that person that means that they want to record you in a way that they're going to do something bad with it? So that you have to sort of question, where are you at with the relations with your patients? But yeah, recording it can have uses, and we had a GP earlier on a webinar today, and somebody asked him if they could record his consultation, and he was perfectly happy. So it is, and again, it's around choice and what are the benefits to that, and how is that going to complement that person's health and well-being, and safety.
It's also about, that's fantastic. It's also about documenting. So make sure that if your patient does record your consultation, make sure you just jot it down in your notes, really, just so that you know. And remember that if you work for a big organisation, there is a media and communications team who'd be really happy to give you some advice on these sort of issues, because they're really used to those sort of things. So just a little bit about after the consultation, and I know that Mark was telling me earlier that there is a survey link on Near Me that you can just literally send out a survey, so you can get some information about how your consultation went. Also really useful for your CPD, and that seems really fantastic. Give the patient the details of future consultations, but also do remind them of the limitations of remote consultations and thinking about record keeping. And again, I'll come to you, Mark, for your experiences of record keeping, but is that something that comes up as a concern for your registrant, you know, the people that you're dealing with near me? Because it's a safe platform, isn't it? It's a secure platform.
It is. It doesn't record it. It doesn't hold any information near me as a platform. It doesn't hold the details of the person that you're speaking to who's accessing your service, and people can't see each other in the waiting area. You know, there's none of that. It's because it's all web based. It all disappears afterwards. I would just, in terms of feedback, there is an option for you to add customized links with the back end of Near Me if you want something specific about your service. But in terms of note taking, I mean, again, it's delivering services differently, but the standard's still the same, that you still need to make contemporaneous, accurate notes, whether you're using a video call, the telephone, or in face-to-face, you know, and how you do that and where you do that. If you have access, if you're doing it from home, you may have access to your employer's network, but you might not have access to that. And it's looking at what have you done in your local environment to safeguard people's information so that, you know, you've not got things in the wheelie bin that might be you know, confidential. So yeah,
one of the things that I find, Mark, when I'm working at home is trying to remember to log out every time I leave my computer, you know, in case there's kids around, which I often forget to do. So I think to remind myself to do that is really actually quite useful. So I wanted to just highlight to you the really good document that a lot of regulators wrote at the beginning of the pandemic. Was a lot of regulators came together and wrote the 10 key principles of remote consultations, and I actually think we've covered all of these, and particularly thinking about vulnerable patients, thinking about special needs, thinking about, you know, explaining how the remote consultation works and getting their consent. I think we've actually covered most of this, but they're worth a read, they really are. So I wanted to pause again, Kelly, if that's okay, to see if there's any big questions that are coming up for, I think probably Mark.
Yes, probably. There's one, sorry, just give me a second while I find it. So quite an important question, I think, from Nicola, and I don't know if this is something you'd be able to answer, but she is asking, how is Near Me accessible for people with sensory impairment, including deaf-blind communities? She says that they're struggling to find a platform that will offer access to translation services and signing. I don't know if that's something you're able to help with, Mark.
Yeah, that's been a tricky one for us to solve in Scotland as well. I'd agree. Yeah, trying to enable any technology for that group in terms of signing. Again, whether you can have that within it with a signer alongside that person, or a signer beaming into that same consultation, that is a tricky one. And I think maybe, again, it's down to what's going to work for that person. Is that where the phone, for example, with some of the visual difficulty, is that going to work out better for that person? Or, but I must admit, I have to hold my hands up to that one. That's not one we've found a particularly great solution for.
It's very difficult, isn't it? I think with, like you say, with those, you know, for deaf-blind communities. And I suppose some of that might be actually, it may not be an option that is suitable for everyone. And although at the moment, you know, for obvious reasons, it's the sort of consultation method of choice, you know, hopefully soon we'll be able to go back to being able to use that much more mixed method. And it might be that for some communities and some patients with different challenges in those areas, it just may not be suitable.
Yeah, I can appreciate that the isolation for that group must be, you know, unimaginable in terms of the contact they would want to have with people that can't go ahead at the minute. Yeah.
We have another question from Anthony, and he's asking about how many of the patients that were assessed via this media, so Near Me and remote consultation, then required face-to-face appointments. I don't know if that's something you have any data or statistics on.
Now then, we did a project with minor injuries units because there was a lot of anxiety about were they going to miss something. in a minor injuries unit. So again, they did some, I think it was in Fife, so they did lots of data gathering around their early projects, and they were worried that if they did a minor injuries unit consultation and sent people with some advice or some self-management, that they would just appear at A&E. And I think from memory, I think of the ones they did, I think 7 reappeared, represented with the same problem. And I think they appeared at A&E, but they were given the exact same advice. So I think the reassurance for the minor injuries units was actually, that's fine, because we didn't miss anything. You know, but the minor injuries units and emergency departments are very clear. If your condition worsens, please contact us again. So I think those 2 safeguards, where they tested this out on a small scale and found that we didn't get people representing massively with missed things, and also if we were clear in our message that if you do worsen, please contact us again. So we do have data on that, and I'm trying to think where it would be. But yes, to reassure you in terms of data that we do have some regarding minor injuries units.
Great, thank you. We've had a lot of people helpfully posting the platforms and stuff that they're using in different independent practice, ones that they think meet their security things. We've got someone who's using VC, so V with the word CSWE, AccureX has been mentioned as well, and a post which I actually think from a colleague came from a colleague from ARCOT is talking about independent practice and just sharing some couple of things really to be considered when doing that. That's in the chat box for people to have a look at, so do try and skim through that as we go along as well. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Fantastic, great questions, and we will make sure that we provide a sort of summary of some of those questions with Mark's answers. We're going to call them Mark's tips, so that you can actually have them after the event. So a few things that we wanted to just point out. You will all have been sent a diversity data survey. We've sent that in the last couple of weeks really. You should have received an email asking you to take part with a unique survey ID. We are, as the HCPC, really committed to being an inclusive and diverse regulator, and we need information from you to enable us to do that. And that's what this diversity data survey is about. There'll be a reminder email sent out soon, and if you haven't received your email, just drop that email, drop the email up there, edi@hcpc-uk.org, a note, and they'll send you one. It's not a problem at all. Wanted to highlight a couple of things on our website. We've got a fantastic COVID hub with some great COVID stories that are really heartrending. But if you've got a COVID story you'd like us to publish, then drop it to us. Our names will be on the end slide, and you can do that, or you can reply to Holly. You've got her email as well. We've got a really good COVID-19 hub with everything together in it, and we hope that that's really useful to you. We were very pleased to launch our student hub a couple of weeks ago, so if there's any students on the call, it's all been amalgamated into one place for you, all your professionalism resources, all things that will be used for your assignments. So I hope that is useful, and again, if you want to write an article for us, then to put on it in something you're proud of, then do let us know. We're going to go to a couple of questions I need to ask you before we finish, if that's all right. It won't take very long. So just a couple of questions for you to ask on the Slido app again that I'm just going to change to. So when you now think of the HCPC, what word comes to mind? I'm not sure that you can see this. I'm hoping you can, but if you could just type in any sort of words that you've got there that would be useful to me, that would be really helpful. It's really nice for us to be able to see that. I'm hoping that you can see that now. Somebody's put diverse, and I'm hoping that there might be similar words to last time, but they might not be. And it's always nice for us again to see whether we've changed your opinion of us at all, or whether it's the same. And it's okay either way. But again, it gives us more data to allow us to really think about the way that we engage with you. We spend a lot of time thinking about the way we engage with you, and whether it's a useful way. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to pause that one if that's okay. Sorry, apologies. I'm just going to pause that one. And I'm going to move on to the next one, which I'd really like to know, Mark and I would really like to know what your takeaway message from today's event is. So I call this, you know, having a takeaway. If only we could have takeaways and enjoy life as we used to, but it's about what little nugget have you thought from today that you actually that's really useful, and actually I might take that away and either implement it in my own practice or I'm going to use it. And I've got really, tech can work really well. Thank goodness the tech worked really well in our session as well today. And thinking out with the box. I love that one, thinking out of the box. Ask people, don't assume you know best. We often do that as health professionals. I totally agree. And the 10 key principles, and don't panic, it'll be okay. I love that, don't panic, it'll be okay. That's how we all feel when we're doing any remote consultation or any remote teaching. We get that awful feeling about, is it going to be okay? VC is the future. I'm hoping that face-to-face will also come back as well, but you know, you are right, there's never going to be a change now. We're probably going to always use VC for some things. So thank you for those, they're absolutely fantastic. And all in this together, we most certainly are all in it together. So that's really useful. Thank you for that. And my last question is how likely, apologies, how likely are you to recommend this training to others? How likely are you to recommend it to others? On a scale of 1 to 10. We will ask you this during your evaluation survey, and just to reinforce to you that we will send out everything from this session, the recording, the slides, the questions and Mark's tips and Mark's answers to everything. All the information will come out to you after the event, and also a link to a survey that we'd like you to complete for us, which is literally 5 minutes long, and then we'll send you a certificate. Everybody loves the certificate, I know. So that's really useful. Thank you very much for that, really helpful. So a couple of last things, and I wanted to really finish on Mark's top tips because I think these are really great. It's really a summary of all the things we've covered today. Mark, do you want to just whiz through those for us?
Yeah, I mean, if video appointments is a new thing or a journey you're about to embark on, or it's an early kind of phase, practicing with each other was the big thing that we did a lot of back in March last year. Trying to get patients and staff comfortable using this. So we just, I was a patient for people, and I would come in to people's waiting areas, and then they would be patients and come into mine. So they knew what it was like for a patient coming in, and that was a really valuable learning thing. I mean, I practiced on my 82-year-old mum, you know, so I think just you know, go find some friends and relatives just to have a go with it, and it just takes some of that early, how is this going to work, questions, and having test calls with patients was really quite good fun as well, because they were like, oh, it worked, wow, I could do this, you know, and getting over that initial hurdle without the pressure of it being just before an appointment seemed to allay people's anxieties quite a lot. And again, it's offering choice, you know. There are some days where a video, it just isn't going to do it. And there are some days where a phone will be better. And there are some days where it's face-to-face, given that person's needs. We had some really good scenario practice as well that some professions shared with us. We had some music therapists, and they set up lots of scenarios where people became upset and broke down, and really had fun with thinking about what might happen. And how am I going to feel it? How am I going to respond to that when it's on video? So they set up lots of kind of innovative things to practice on each other with, to catch each other out. And again, it was in a safe environment. They were doing it with their colleagues, but they felt a lot more empowered to deal with that when a patient was distressed, for example, on a video call. And prepare well. We get ready for patients coming in. We get ready for our service users coming in to see us. So we should prepare our video appointments as equally as thoroughly as we do our face-to-face ones. And I would implore folk to take a break. Doing video appointments, it's hard work. It takes it out of you, and it requires an awful lot more concentration than perhaps it might do in face-to-face. So I would just encourage people to make times between your video appointments to get your notes done, to look at something else that's not a screen, to get a bit of fresh air, just to kind of look after yourself and keep yourself fresh for the next patient that's going to want them. They're going to want you to be 100%, and that's something to bear in mind. And also your background. You know, I mean, I think we all know what constitutes background, you know, inappropriate on the other side. And again, reassuring the patients or people accessing your service that you're somewhere where they're not going to be seen or heard. And identifying yourself at the beginning is another kind of thing. So anyway, there's lots of good practice guidelines out there, but those are the ones that I was keen to kind of pass on to folk tonight.
Thank you, Mark. That's brilliant. It really sums up lots of things you've talked about today. So that's really good. Okay, so a couple of plugs for the webinars run by the HCPC. We run webinars once a month looking at our standards. We've got Standard 6 webinar on Wednesday the 20th of January. You can log on, we'll put the link up, and again, if you don't get the link from the chat box today, we'll send it to you in an email. And NHS Education for Scotland Primary Care Group are doing a fantastic webinar that I'm definitely going to log into on the 28th of January, looking at wellbeing, long COVID and bereavement, some really things that we're all worried about, and details will follow. And I think the best thing to do is to follow Mark on Twitter, and he will definitely be telling you about that. And if we find out about it before the survey goes out to you, because you'll get a survey from us later on this week, next week, we'll mention it all then as well for you, because that's really exciting. These are the ways that you can contact us, lots of different ways that you can contact us, and we wanted to finish on a big thank you from both Mark, myself, Holly and Kelly for dialing in this evening, giving up your evening, your precious time when you've already working extremely hard, and thank you so much for everything you're doing at the moment, and really stay safe, really important. We are going to just leave the webinar now. It is a bit strange when it just finishes, I know, and some of you will be in the middle of looking at chat. I can only assure you that we will send you all the questions from chat with Mark's answers after the event, so don't feel that you're missing out on anything at all. It will come in a lovely email with lots of links and things for you. So thank you from me. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Mark?
No, it's just great to see everyone this evening, for people engaging after work. I know it's a long day, and hopefully we've given you something to kind of enable you to consider video appointments, and then do interact with us on social media. We'd be lucky to hear your stories and then help you along if we can. So thank you very much for and asking great questions and engaging. That's always fantastic as when you're presenting to have that dialogue. So thank you.
Definitely, Mark. Okay, well, thank you to Kelly and Holly for being fantastic as well, and take care, everybody. We're going to finish now. Thank you.